or of rabbit? Well, we might not know about life, but we can easily find out what a word means. We just look it up in the Dictionary TM. Episode over. Wait a sec. The first problem with relying on a dictionary to give a word meaning is that dictionaries are made by people. And the people who write dictionaries, called lexicographers, still need some other way of figuring out what words mean. The second problem is that writing a definition isn't always the most effective way of pinning down the meaning of a word. The area of linguistics interested in meaning and the many ways that we can describe it is semantics. To better understand the complexities of meaning, let's start with the humble definition, a clear and concise description of how people are using a word. Definitions are what we're used to reading in dictionaries and help us see when one word has a certain type of relationship to another word. For example, several words can have about the same definition. They're synonyms, like happy and glad and joyful. Two words can also have the opposite definition. They're antonyms, like inside and outside. One word can refer to a specific member of a broader category, such as red, which is a type of color, or rabbit, a type of animal. The specific word, like red and rabbit, is a hyponym, and the broader word, like color and animal, is a hypernym. A word which is a hyponym of one word can be a hypernym of another. Snowshoes are one type of rabbit, and a rabbit is a type of animal. Semantic relationships, like synonyms, antonyms, hyponyms, and hypernyms, are found across many languages. But not all languages draw semantic lines in the same place. For example, English has one word, know, while Polish splits this up. It has wiem for I know a fact and znam for I know a person. In contrast, Portuguese fazer is used where English has both to do and to make. If you look up a word in a bilingual dictionary, you'll often find more than one possible translation, and you need to know further context about how a language carves up the semantic space in order to know which translation to use. Definitions are also useful for describing how words shift their meanings over time. For example, words can become broader in their meaning. Thing used to refer to a council or assembly in English, but now it can be used to refer to anything. Words can also become narrower in their meaning. For example, girl used to mean child, and now it's more specific. And words can change meaning altogether. Nice used to mean ignorant, and then silly, then fussy, and now, well, nice. What a journey. One driver of this language change is taboo. We use words as euphemisms to avoid saying ruder words, but then the euphemisms start getting associated with the original meaning, and so another euphemism is needed, and so on. For example, the word toilet originally meant a cloth, and then a cloth used on a dressing table, then it meant the items associated with a dressing table, like a mirror and a hairbrush, and then a room containing a dressing table with a lavatory attached. Finally, people use this word to refer to the porcelain plumbing item and the room that it's in, because it sounded more polite than, I don't know, crap house? Poop room? Now the word toilet is a bit too direct in some people's mind, and they use another euphemism for toilet, such as bathroom or loo. Or maybe bathroom even feels a little too much for you, and you use a different euphemism like, I'm just gonna go wash my hands. The euphemism cycle continues. Even as words change, their definitions can still be straightforward. But definitions don't always work so easily. For example, the same sequence of sounds can have multiple meanings, like bank, which can be the side of a river, or a place where people store money. This is known as polysemy, and it only gets trickier from there. Let's see what the thought bubble is serving up. Let's picture the sandwich we would choose if we were going to draw an unremarkable sandwichy sandwich. We might consider the type of bread. White, whole wheat, square loaf, or something more rustic. And we'll probably imagine a filling. Maybe you went with a PB&J or something with meat, cheese, and lettuce like the emoji sandwich. I went for a grilled cheese myself. Now let's take the sandwiches we pictured and try to write a definition for sandwich. Maybe it's a filling between two pieces of bread. Or wait, a sandwich can be served on a roll, and wraps and pitas are on a lot of sandwich menus, so maybe a sandwich is a filling between two somewhat bread-like pieces. A burger works, it's got a filling between two halves of a roll. But what about an ice cream sandwich? It's got a filling between two cookies, and it even has sandwich in the name. And if we're going to count wraps and rolls, does that make a burrito a sandwich? A hot dog? A pizza? What if we fold the pizza? And this doesn't even get into how sandwiches are different cross-culturally. Maybe your sandwich involves Vegemite or liver paste, like the Norwegian matpika. Okay, so our sandwich definition isn't really working that well, and we probably need to figure out definitions for filling and somewhat bread-like pieces. Oh no. We are, to use a sandwich figure of speech, in a bit of a pickle. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Now I want a sandwich. Or maybe 17 sandwiches of different definitions? Anyway, any definition, if we think about it hard enough, starts to break down with exceptions and edge cases. How do we know whether something is a cup? Whether a dress is blue and black or white and gold? And that's not even getting into social constructs like genders and emotions. Maybe nothing means anything ever. And yet, somehow we do manage to go through the world and communicate with each other reasonably well most of the time. If I ask you to think of a sandwich or a chair or a bird, you do think of something. So maybe the problem isn't with words. It's with trying to use definitions to express their meaning. Psychology professor Eleanor Roche came up with a different idea. Rather than imagining we have dictionary-style, clear-cut definitions of things in our brain, Roche argued that we instead have prototypes or exemplars, the most typical representatives of a category. Then we have other category members that are more or less central depending on how similar they are to the exemplar. For example, an exemplar of a chair probably has 4 legs, a rigid back, and seats 1 human. But that doesn't mean that a chair can't have 3 legs, or be extra tall, or be an adjustable desk chair. And most people's exemplars of a bird are small, feathery ones, like sparrows or robins. But that doesn't mean that less central category members, like emus or penguins, aren't still birds. Roche's prototype theory offers us an escape hatch from definitions. We don't need to pin down an exact set of criteria for sandwichhood or chairness. Instead, we can recognize that some examples are really obvious prototypical members of their category, and other examples are more loosely related. Both kinds of meaning are totally okay. Delicious even. Prototype theory works well with content words, words with meanings that we could point to, describe, or draw a picture of. It even works okay with ideas that are abstract, like happiness and democracy. But not every word has a prototype. Take words like the, of, is, or, if, and every. It doesn't make much sense to ask what a the looks like, or try to think of the most prototypical example of an of. These little words that help a sentence fit together grammatically are called function words. They can only really be described based on their relationship to the words they're used with, their function in the sentence. To pin down exactly what these functions are, we can express the relationships between words in mathematical, symbolic terms using predicate calculus. This concept also comes up in mathematics, computer science, or philosophy, where it can also go by the names first-order logic, quantificational logic, and first-order predicate calculus. Predicate calculus is a branch of formal semantics. That's formal as in using formulas, not as in semantics that you do while wearing a ball gown. At the heart of formal semantics is one assumption. To understand what a sentence means, we have to know when the sentence is true or not. And predicate calculus helps us find the meanings of certain words in those true sentences. To see how predicate calculus works for 2 function words, all and a, let's start with the sentence, all crash course hosts like Gav. If it's true, we can infer that Gav exists, and that since I'm a crash course host, I like Gav. We can't infer how many crash course hosts there are, but we know the sentence applies to all of them, so all is known as a universal quantifier. If the sentence was a crash course host likes Gav, then we could infer that there's a Gav, and that there is one of the set of crash course hosts that likes them. It might be me, but we can't be certain. We don't know which crash course host it is, only that they exist. So A is known as an existential quantifier. In the sentence, all crash course hosts like a rabbit, we now have one universal quantifier and one existential quantifier. This sentence actually has 2 different meanings. 1, there is a rabbit that all crash course hosts like, or 2, every crash course host each likes a different rabbit. It would be hard to write down this kind of meaning in a definition, let alone describe this interaction between all and a in a few words. But using symbols lets us see these relationships more clearly, and lets us see when similar functional meanings are expressed in different languages. We've only explored 2 function words here. There's an extensive set of notation we can use to explore other function words, and some of them are still being figured out. That said, like prototype theory, predicate calculus also doesn't work for everything. These methods are just 2 ways to do semantics. Other approaches to semantics specialize in still more kinds of meanings, such as binary feature analysis, which is useful for precisely describing words that are part of a taxonomy, like words for family members. There's natural semantic metalanguage, where words can be broken down into other, more basic units of meaning, and cognitive semantics, where metaphors draw connections between abstract concepts, like time, and concrete concepts, like physical location. Some aspects of semantics highlight similarities between different, unrelated languages. Other aspects highlight meanings that are more specific to a particular language or language family. There's so much more to talk about, and we'd love to get into it, but we don't have time. Trying to articulate the meaning of a word in a dictionary is an amazing skill, but meaning is complicated and nebulous and requires a range of semantic tools to pin down. Next time on Crash Course Linguistics, we'll zoom out further and talk about meaning beyond words in a larger social context. Thanks for watching this episode of Crash Course Linguistics. If you want to help keep all Crash Course
Speak? Speak? Hey, where'd your glasses go?
Sorry, Juicy. You gotta stay in the car for just a minute. I know.
Wait.
Seven just chilling.
Wait. I lost it.
God seek me. Come on.
Sasha, sit. Sasha, sit. Put the collar. We put the collar on. We put the collar. No, Sasha. We put the collar on. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Semantics. Okay, so as far as microphones and webcams and everything in this course, you don't need to share all that stuff if you don't want to. It is 10:30 in the morning, so you know, it's still the middle of the night for some of us. I totally understand. Okay, I have some slides for administrative stuff, but if you haven't seen the Canvas page, here it is. I think most of you have seen it. About 20 of you have filled in the background survey, which is fantastic. Although 220 and 282 are prerequisites for this course, you don't really need much. All you really need to know are word categories, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in this course as a refresher. And the syntax that we do in this course is very simple compared to 220. There's no X bar. When we start syntax in like the 5th week, we don't even use NPs. We just start with Ns and VPs and Ss. Like we use very simple stuff because the semantics that we use is a little bit more complicated. So I'll talk a little bit about what semantics is, but just to go through the Canvas page and some important stuff. Each week on the front page, I put the most important stuff that we're doing on the front, so that way you don't have to do much effort to know what you have to do. You can go to modules and find everything there as well, but everything is on the front page. So the weeks are a little bit confusing because we start on Friday. So technically week 1 is Friday and Tuesday. So that's just how it is officially. So on the lecture pages, and these are on modules 2, I'll just show you. So lecture 1, course introduction, lecture 2, inferences and semantic relations. If you click on one of these, you'll see the lecture slides on the top where you can download those. And then I break each lecture slide into different components. And on those components, there's usually a summary with some new examples and re-explanations of everything in the slides. That way you can see all of the information on the slides and you get a rewording of those on the lecture page. So if there's ever examples we do in class and you say, oh, I wish I had just one more example that I could work through to really get this concept, you'll have a new one on the lecture page on Canvas with, a very similar style, but new sentences that you can work through on your own. And often for many of the concepts we learn in class, there are even going to be some practice questions you can do yourself with solutions available on the page with full explanations. That way you can practice the concepts as well. So there are lecture pages like this for every single week in the course. As we get towards the end of the course, though, the lecture pages get a little bit smaller just because the concepts get a little bit more difficult to communicate with these pages because they become a little bit heavier in notation. And we'll understand why in a bit. So let me go over to the slides where we'll talk about some of the syllabus, what the course is about, and all that kind of stuff. If you have any questions throughout this entire thing, interrupt me at any time, or you can type in chat, you can speak up through the microphone, whatever you prefer. I do not mind being interrupted, especially in an online class.
I have a question.
Yes,
How can we address you? Can we say Trevor or Mr. Block?
Trevor is preferred.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so go over to the slides. Yeah, so just call me Trevor. If you have any questions about anything in the course or any personal matters, you can email me at tblock@sfu.ca, or you can post in the discussion board. Personal matters, of course, email me. Not everybody needs to know about your sickness or your grades, but if it's a course content question, the discussion board is preferred. If you email me, that's fine. If it's a really good question, I'll just post it myself anonymously to the discussion board so that way everybody can see it. I only have one scheduled office hour in Zoom each week. That's Wednesdays from 12:30 to 1:30. That doesn't mean I don't want to see you. It's just that when I have scheduled office hours, people don't tend to come. So I prefer appointments. I'm happy to see you at any time. So don't be afraid to make appointments or email. In fact, on the website, let me just go back again. You can see my schedule here on the front page. So Trevor's schedule under important links. I post everything I do in a week. So if I go to next week, you can see my availability for appointments if you want to make them. So any of these white spaces, you can email me to make an appointment so you know when I'm available. Everything that's grayed out. And after these times, I can't do in-person or Zoom appointments, but I can do email. Uh, any extra TA office hours we schedule will be there too. And if I have any other meetings I have to attend where I can't do more stuff, I'll put those there as well. But just so you know my availability, so we don't have to do a back and forth guessing game, you can just check that schedule. So yeah, if you ever need help in the course or have questions, do not hesitate to ask. You cannot bother me too much. And if you do, I'll let you know, but you'll have to bother me an awful lot before I do that. We do have a TA for the course, and she will be holding office hours by appointment only. So on the syllabus, you will have to contact her. She is in China right now for about half the course. So except for Tuesdays, she is available after 4:30 p.m. So if you're someone who prefers appointments at night, that'll be great. She does 90 minutes a week. So if you email her and she says, sorry, I can't make an appointment with you, she only has 90 minutes a week for that. So she may redirect you to me. But she is just as helpful as I am. So if you're someone who prefers late night appointments, please contact the TA. That information is on Canvas right now. Her hours will change about midway through the course when she comes back to Canada, and I will announce that on Canvas. There's no textbook for the course. Let me go back to the Canvas page again. But there are some recommended readings. This is a Q course. It's notation heavy. It's a little bit mathematics heavy. I know that might be a little scary, but this course is designed for linguists, for people who haven't done math in years and years and years. I've taught it a couple times. I know how this goes. I know your fears, but everybody gets through it in the end. So you do not have to do any readings in this course. All the slides are designed so that way you can get through this course with a perfect score if necessary, or if you can attain that just through the slides and through the lectures. But if you want more readings, they're there on the Canvas page. They're all free. So there's 2 whole textbooks that are free, and there's some chapters from the main course textbook that's usually used, that's incredibly expensive, and from a Pragmatics book that will cover a couple of the lectures in the course. So there are free readings on Canvas. If you do them after lecture, because a lot of the readings are a little bit dense if you try to do them before, just because of the nature of the material that is taught in this course. But if you don't like doing readings, this is a fantastic course for you. Okay. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about what the course is about, but I want to talk about how you're being graded first, and then we'll talk about the course. Uh, it's important to me, especially in an online environment, that you get a lot of practice and that I get feedback, even if you don't want to interact much with me, and that you get feedback, even if you don't want to interact that much with us. So every single lecture has a practice exercise that is repeatable. And you get 5 attempts at these. They're Some of them are randomized, some of them are not. So every time you do the exercise, you get different questions, and they're not meant to be difficult. They're just meant to be some basic questions that test your understanding of the material. And these are all pass or not pass. So you'll get 10 questions, you just need to get 75%, and if you get 75% or higher on any of your 5 attempts, you get full credit. So whether it's 0.75 or 1, you get the same score, you get full credit. Uh, If you do not get 75% or higher, this is not a fail, it's just a not pass. And the point is you can still pass after that. These are for learning. So if you do not get 75% or higher after 5 attempts, you just make an appointment with me on Zoom, or you come to office hours, or you talk with the TA, and we will go over the questions you got wrong with you. And we will help you get the correct answer. We'll help you go over your understanding and make sure you understand the fundamentals. We will also give you alternative problems, and you'll work through those with us, and we'll make sure that you understand those. And if it seems like you've understood it, we'll give you credit for those practice exercises. So the point of 10% of your grade on these practice exercises is to make sure that you're keeping up, is to make sure that you understand everything, and it's to make sure that you can do the assignments and the tests in this course and that you're not falling behind. So you can work on these by yourself, with your friends, use your notes, use the examples, use the discussion board, use us, so me and the TA, use all the resources you can. Uh, Even if you need to talk to us before you use your 5 attempts, feel free. You can talk to us after your first attempt. That's fine. You don't have to wait for all 5 attempts. These are just some repeatable things on Canvas. So there's one on the front page already. You won't be able to do this until next week, but I can just show you what this looks like. Just a little repeatable quiz on Canvas. So there's multiple choice things you've seen before. So these questions aren't that exciting all the time because they have to be auto-gradable. So some true false, some multiple choice, some multiple answer. Um, but yeah, they're just there to help you understand the basics and make sure that you can get off the ground and that you're not going to struggle really hard on the assignments. These are all due 2 days before each test. So normally I would have these due on a weekly basis. However, I found that this causes a lot of stress just because you have something to do each week. So they're due 2 weeks before each test instead. I do encourage you to do these on a weekly basis so that way when we finish covering the material, you do them. But I know that you have busy schedules. It's summer too. So Just do them when you can, but I do the hard deadlines right before each test. So that's 10% of your grade. It's a very small amount, but it's very important. And the information I get from this is important too, because I can see what you all struggle with, and I can bring those up during the lectures in the recordings. I can develop more materials and more practice, so that way, if I see everybody's getting a particular question wrong, I can address that. I can give you more questions about it, and we can work on those together.
Do we have a test each week as well?
No, there are going to be 3 tests in this course, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
So if we don't have a test, then when are the exercises due?
So the exercises will be due in 3 chunks. On the syllabus, if I take a look, there will be a set of exercises due on June 13th. There will be a set of exercises due on July 7th, and there will be a set of exercises due at the beginning of August. So you'll get a new practice exercise like almost every week, but they'll just be due in chunks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I encourage you to do them every week and keep up with them, but in case you do have a busy schedule or can't get to something each week, there's a little bit more time to work on those. Also, at the end of the course, if you don't do one of them, that's fine. Your lowest exercise is just dropped. So you can miss one or fail one, and that does not count against your grade. You can also participate in the linguistics research participation system. So you could do one experiment for 1 credit, or do the research ethics tutorial, or write a summary of a podcast or something like that. It's on the syllabus, and I'll take an additional exercise off. So if you do happen to miss 1 or 2 throughout the semester, that's fine. I'll just wipe those off of your score. So these are not meant to be something to penalize you. Like, nobody should get less than 100% on these at the end of the course. These are entirely meant for learning. Okay. Assignments are the big thing in this course. Normally I'm pretty test heavy, but I've decided to shift a lot of these over to the assignments this semester. Assignments are due 10:30 a.m. So right before class on the days they're due. So normally this is Tuesdays. Some days or some weeks it's Fridays. This is on the syllabus, and the dates are here. I don't think these dates will change. If the dates do change, I will tell you. You can work by yourself for these, or you can work in groups of up to 3 people. It's your choice. Some of you have friends, some of you don't. Uh, if you are looking for group members, there's always the discussion board, and there's also the Linguistics Student Union Discord server. I don't have a link to it, but I know the Facebook groups have it. The LSU Discord server is great. I mean, all linguistics courses have a little group on them. A lot of the admins have taken this course with me too, so they might have advice. I'm sure I say a lot of things about the course, and you might not believe me when I say things, but you can talk to the old students who have taken it, and they'll tell you exactly what to expect in this course. So the Linguistics Student Union Discord server is a great way to talk to people and meet people as well. The assignment structure in this course is a little bit different, and I want you to really think about this and keep this in mind. In a lot of courses, the assignments build up to tests, where the tests have the hardest questions in the course. That's not quite how this course works. Uh, Assignments have 2 types of questions. They have learning and reinforcement questions, and these are the questions that cover the stuff that we talked about in lecture. So we learn new stuff in lecture, and you get questions that are very similar to the lecture questions. Thank you, Corey, for posting that in the chat. So that is the Discord server link for the LSU. If you join that, you'll be able to find other people in the Linguistic Student Union. So these are all linguistic students, and there's servers for each of the courses. I am not there, so don't worry about talking about course stuff. I can't see that stuff. So there's learning and reinforcement questions. So these are just your typical questions you expect to see. And you'll always see those questions after we learn something that week. So this is like fresh material. You're trying stuff out for the first or second time. Then in the following assignment, you get these things called understanding and extension questions. And these are questions about older material. So these are things that you've already tried out, you've already been marked on, you've already made mistakes and recovered and learned from. And you're applying the material to newer situations, more broad situations. You're expanding the material by adding some new information that I'm giving you, or you're giving explanations as to why something works, or giving you something from philosophy or discrete math or graduate semantics and making it a little bit simpler and asking you to incorporate it. So these are some of the more challenging questions in the course that really test your understanding. This is where the bulk of the exploratory learning comes from in the course. And this is why I encourage you to work in groups of, 2 or 3 people so you can talk with others and think about these ideas. And I am very conscious about the difficulty of some of these questions. Uh, Sometimes I give questions that I think are very difficult and they turn out to be very easy. Sometimes I give out questions that I think are not that difficult and they turn out to be incredibly difficult. So when I mark things like this, I make sure that I take a look at everyone's solutions, see where everyone is, and I mark accordingly. So if I give out something that's incredibly difficult that everyone struggles with, I will make sure that I never penalize everyone for that. Uh, I take responsibility for my own actions if I give something that's too difficult. So don't worry too much about that. Just try your best on these every single week. And as long as you all try your best on these, everything will come out in the end. And I will make sure that in the face of adversity, your hard effort is rewarded. Uh, these are all handwritten, so handwritten or typed. So these are not multiple choice or anything like that. This is where you can actually write things down and explain your answers. I never need full sentences for anything in this course. You can do point form, short form. I mean, whatever gets the idea across. I don't care about your grammar. I don't care about your sentence structure. Just get everything across however efficiently you can. So there's 6 assignments. The first one is 5%, and then the rest are 10% each. Are we allowed to do the assignments on an iPad device you can write with, or does it have to be on paper? It can be on whatever you want. So you can write it on paper and scan it. You can write it on an iPad and upload it as a PDF. You can type it and submit it as a document or PDF. As long as I can open it and I can read it, I am happy with whatever. If you're talented enough to do it on an Etch-a-Sketch, be my guest. If you're too young to know what an Etch-a-Sketch is, sorry, that joke didn't work out. Okay, so that's how the assignments work. If you have any questions about that, I'm happy to take them now. If you don't know what the assignments look like yet, I think one of the assignments is already available on Canvas for you to see too, so you're welcome to take a look at that as well before you ask anything. But I will talk about the tests now. So the tests are asynchronous. You do not have to be on during class time to do tests. Instead, I'm going to give you a 12-hour window to start these. So you'll have between 9 a.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Pacific to start each test. If you're in a time zone where this doesn't work for you, let me know and I'll adjust the window. But when you start, you'll have a time limit. So it's usually 50 minutes, but I can adjust that time limit if there's technical issues that you have, or if you think you'll need more time to upload your solutions. I'll also take time out of lecture. So that way, if you are someone who is attending live each class, you can just take the class time to do it. And I'll be here in the Zoom call. So if you have any questions, you can ask them just like it would be in an in-person exam. So I know some of you have questions that when you answer or when you ask over email, I can't get to them in time. But if you have questions and I'm in a Zoom call, it's very fast. We'll do that. So on those classes, there will not be any lecture, well, on those days where there are tests. So June 15th, there's a 10% test, and then July 9th and August 6th, they're 12.5% each. These are non-cumulative tests, so we just go by the chunks that we learn in each section. They're all open book tests, so you can use anything that you've done in the course. You can have all the solutions open for all the questions, the lecture pages, the videos, whatever you need. If you rely very heavily on those, you may not be able to finish them in time, but if you're using those files as references, you should have more than enough time. I also give you little test guides before each test, so you know exactly how many questions there are, you know exactly what each question is going to ask you to do. So that way, before you start the test, you know what you have to do. It's not, you're not going to waste time reading the question and trying to figure out what I'm expecting of you. And you're not going to waste time trying to figure out what to study before the test. No, you'll know exactly what to study and exactly what I'm going to ask you. You just don't know the sentences you'll get or the formulas you'll get or whatever thing you're going to analyze. And the test questions are not intended to be super difficult. I'm not giving you the extension and understanding questions on the tests. I'm just giving you the learning and reinforcement questions on the assignments. So just like the questions we do in the lectures, just like the questions you do on the assignments and the practice exercises, they're just the simpler ones, just to make sure that you understand the basics and can do those, I don't want to say easy, but those medium difficultish questions on your own. So that's what the tests are. They're not meant to be the grade killers that other professors use tests for. So that's the grading. Well, that's the course components. On Canvas, there's the grade boundaries. And what I'll say about the grade boundaries is that I will never give less than a B- grade average for this course. So if there's ever an exam or an assignment where the average comes out to be less than a B-, just know that at the end of the course, everything will be adjusted at least above a B-. If for some reason the course average comes out to a C+ in this course, that is 100% my fault. That is not your fault. That should not be happening. Taught this enough times that if it is a C+, that is 100% on me. So yeah, that's it for course components. Are there any questions about the tests, assignments, or practice exercises?
So the practice exercises are not due each week, right? Every week?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they're due 2 days before each of these tests. So 2 days before June 15th, 2 days before July 9th, and 2 days before August 6th. And if I go back here and I click on the practice exercise, I think I have it. Yeah, this mastery exercise is due, sorry, this should say practice exercise, is due by Sunday, June 13th at 11:59 p.m. So it'll tell you the date here. And the due date is also here. So I think at the bottom of the syllabus page, yeah, I see more on this list than you see right now, but when it fills out, it'll look something like this. So it'll tell you when they're all due. Okay. So I guess for the remaining of the class, we can talk about what semantics is and what we're going to be doing in this course.
Sir, Trevor, and so the attendance is optional, right?
Yeah, the attendance is optional. All of these
Yeah,
will be
because
recorded.
18th I'm like on the plane, so
Yeah, don't worry
Okay,
about
thank you.
coming. All of these will be recorded and they will all be uploaded to both SFU Vault for download, so you can store them on your computer, and they'll also be uploaded to YouTube so you can stream them online. And all of those will be posted on the lecture videos page on the front page under important links. So there will be a YouTube link and a download. All of the other videos I release will also be posted here. So videos where I go over the test guides, and some of the assignment solutions will be there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Before I start, I have to give a thanks to Dr. Chung A Han, who has taught this course for many years, who gave me a lot of the base slides for the course. Although I've done a lot of modifications over the past 2 years, it's without her help so long ago, this course would not be the way it was without her. So I have to give her credit for everything. So, okay, what is semantics? Semantics is all about meaning. And if we were in philosophy, we could spend an entire 13 weeks arguing about what the word meaning means. And at the end of those 13 weeks, we might not get anywhere, but we would have a lot of arguments in our head. Luckily, in this course, we're not going to really entertain any of those arguments. We're just going to say that uh, words convey, or words have linguistic expression. Sorry, sentences convey linguistic expressions, and the information in those linguistic expressions is meaning. So meaning is just information in linguistic expressions. Okay, so that's very, very simple. It doesn't really explain what meaning is that well, but that's okay. That's just our assumption. Uh, take a philosophy of language course if you want to go deeper into that. So what's nice is that, well, I shouldn't say what's nice, but what's amazing is that if you know a language, even if you've never heard a particular sentence before, you can still understand what any sentence means. Uh, and even not with meaning, but with grammaticality. You can hear a sentence before and you can determine if the sentence is grammatical or ungrammatical. You can produce a sentence and say, oh, what I just said is grammatical or ungrammatical. You can have a new thought that you have never thought of before, and you can find the words to express that thought, even if they've never been uttered by any of the 300 million people that speak your language, or however many people in the world there are. So here's a sentence you've probably never seen before, and as I read it, you can imagine it in your head. One of the melted chocolate bars dripped down the side of the red wardrobe into Spider-Man's left nostril. Beautiful mental image. You've probably never heard it before, but you can understand it, and that's really amazing. The brain is a magical thing. Well, it's magical to us. I think biologists just call it like, biology. Whatever. They're not as fun as us. So we can understand the meaning of however many sentences that we come up with. But how do we know what the meaning of a sentence is? Well, we have this thing called morphology, which tells us the structure of words. And we have this thing called syntax, which gives us the structure of sentences. And we need both of these things. We also need the meanings of words. So to understand the meaning of a sentence, really we need to know what the words mean. So we need to know a bunch of individual units, but we also need to know how those units combine into phrases. So if we've seen a syntax course, we're very used to trees that build up something like this. I don't have any labels here, but you can imagine we have like an NP here and a VP here, and this builds into a sentence. And depending on who you learn syntax with, you might see this as a TP or a DP. The labels don't really matter in the end. It's just whatever syntactic theory you use, but words come together to form whatever phrases, and those phrases have meanings. So we can take a look at these different types of sentences and we can ask ourselves, well, what do these sentences mean? So to is kind of a complicated sentence, and we can ask ourselves what this sentence means. It is not the case that the tall man walked slowly, but the young woman with the red hat walked quickly. Okay, so what does this sentence mean? Well, it's a long sentence, so it sometimes might be difficult to parse and understand, but it's also ambiguous because it has more than one meaning. And that's because of this lovely little phrase, it is not the case that. Because if I bracket this whole thing off, I can say it is not true that The tall man walked slowly, but the young woman with the red hat walked quickly. And this is going to become a little bit of a pain if I use these words the entire time. So let me just abbreviate some of these. The tall man walked slowly. I'm going to call this M for man, but I'm just going to call this and because they mean the same thing, but and. Uh, but okay, let's just call this but. Let's keep it simple. The young woman with the red hat walked quickly. Let's call this W for woman. Okay, so we can say M but W. This will make it a little bit easier for us to talk about. So one structure says it's not the case that M but W. So we could actually draw this and we could say, okay, it's not true that M but W. So in this sort of tree structure, we're basically saying that not is negating the entire rest of the sentence. And that's one interpretation. So in order to get the meaning of this interpretation, we need to know its structure because it's not just the words that make up the meaning, but it's how those words are combined. But there's another way that we can interpret it. So what if it was just, it is not the case that the tall man walks slowly, but the young woman with the red hat walked quickly. So the not is just negating the tall man walked slowly, but the woman with the red hat walked quickly is true. So in this case, we could draw something like not M. So we have a negation there. Then we have but W, and we would end up with a structure that looks a little bit more like this. So if we think about what not is negating, it's only negating M. So we have two different interpretations of this sentence, and we have two different structures. And I don't have detailed syntactic structures here because we're really not focusing on drawing that. That's not the point. It's just to understand that there are two different interpretations. But, you know, we need more than just the meaning of words to understand what the meaning of a sentence is. We need the words and its structure. So this is something that semantics investigates. It investigates what's called structural ambiguity. It's ambiguous due to its structure. So that's what 2 is showing us, that structure is important for the meaning of a sentence. 3 is an interesting case. Did you stop beating your dog? And another person replies, no. Okay, well, this is an interesting response because when you say no, it implies that you've beaten your dog in the past. What happens if you say yes? Did you stop beating your dog? Yeah, I stopped beating my dog. Well, it still implies that you beat your dog in the past. It's interesting because this is a yes/no question. But regardless of whether you answer yes or no, you're still putting yourself in a very bad light. So semantics investigates things like this too, and this is why this particular type of question is not allowed in a court of law. They call this a leading question or a leading question. Informally, they call that a leading question. Linguistically, we call this a presupposition, which we'll investigate on Tuesday. So really, we don't want to be asking these types of questions because no matter how you answer it, if you answer it correctly, you're putting a bad light on you. In order to really answer this question, you have to say something that's not yes or no. You have to say, I have never beaten my dog. But that's not a response that you're expected to give under pressure. Finally, this last example, everybody loves someone. Sometimes we don't expect something like this to have two different meanings, but there are two different meanings to this sentence. There is a meaning out there where, okay, let's say we have a bunch of people on the left and a bunch of people on the right, and we're saying for each person out there, there is someone that person loves. So everybody out there loves someone or other. So that could be one interpretation of the sentence, everybody loves someone. But there's another interpretation to that sentence. There is an interpretation where everybody loves someone, or someone is the focus. There's a particular person who everybody loves. So there's one person in particular who everybody is in love with. Everybody loves someone. So there's a second interpretation to that sentence. And this is really interesting linguistically because usually when there's an ambiguous sentence, it's because there's a particular word that has multiple meanings, or it's because there's a structural difference. Like there's two different structures, like we saw in the case of two with the not. But with a sentence like everybody loves someone, it doesn't seem like either of those words, or well, any of those three words has multiple meanings. And it doesn't seem like there's more than one structure to that sentence. So how are we getting two different interpretations from that? And later on in the course, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the syntactic structure and take a look at how things move around. And we're going to find that there actually are two different structures to that sentence. So we get to do some semantic investigation there, which is kind of neat. So, semantics takes a look at all these different types of sentences, and we investigate how we get different meanings from these. So on the other hand, what I should recap here, and something very important that I should mention, semantics is the study of literal language. And I really have to emphasize this. It's literal language. You will struggle with this for a couple weeks because when you hear words, a lot of words are not used literally. A lot of phrases are not used literally. We use figurative language all the time, but semantics is very literal. Contrast that with the study of pragmatics. Pragmatics studies figurative language as well as meaning that comes from conversational rules and world knowledge and expectations. So semantics is very limited to a conversation or to a sentence, so within the language itself, while pragmatics goes beyond the language. It goes into the real world, into the conversation. So it extends into jokes, inferences, expectations. So we have some jokes here that pragmatics would investigate. So my grandmother started walking 5 miles a day when she was 60. She's 93 today, and we don't know where the hell she is. Now, of course, with literal language, this isn't that funny because it's perfectly valid if you analyze this literally to expect that she walks 5 miles a day and she doesn't return home. But real world knowledge tells us that when someone says they walk 5 miles a day, they usually come home. So this is only kind of funny because real world knowledge tells us that she comes home. That's a joke. 6, this recipe certainly is silly. It says to separate 2 eggs, but it doesn't say how far to separate them. Yeah. In the real world, we know when we say separate 2 eggs, that means to crack them. But with literal language, separating 2 eggs physically makes sense. So semantics would be like, oh yeah, separating 2 eggs, that could happen. That's literal language. But pragmatics, real world knowledge tells us, oh, that's kind of weird. That's funny. So 2 examples of jokes. And then here's an interesting case, 7, of not saying something directly in order to be a little bit nicer. So you see this a lot with teaching, and if you go on Rate My Professor and read people's reviews, you'll see something very similar too. What did you think of his performance? Well, other people make jokes when they want to impress people. So be didn't really answer A's question. What did you think of his performance? B didn't say it was bad or it was good. Instead, B said something irrelevant. Well, other people make jokes when they want to impress people. And expectations about conversational rules and knowledge would say, okay, because B didn't say something relevant, B probably didn't like it. It's just a polite way of saying it. Maybe B knew the person, maybe B just wants to save their image or save their face, but B doesn't want to be direct about it. So Pragmatics investigates that kind of thing. And in this course, we're focusing mainly on semantics, but we will talk a little bit about pragmatics because it is important to differentiate the two and also to discuss the two because at some level, there is an interaction between semantics and pragmatics. So to summarize the two, and just so we're on the same page here, literal meaning is semantics, and meaning that comes from real world knowledge and conversational rules and from people's expectations is pragmatics. So this is the focus of our course for about 11 of the weeks, and for about 2 weeks, we do pragmatics. So next Tuesday, we'll talk a little bit about presuppositions and implicature in pragmatics. And then in the final week of the course, we'll do a week on jokes. So that way we can end the course on sort of a light note with a little bit less intense work. And we'll talk about jokes and pragmatics and Grice's maxims and how all of those come together. Okay, so just 2 more slides to talk about the different types of semantics. So semantics is broken up into 2 main fields, lexical semantics and truth conditional semantics. At SFU, lexical semantics is integrated into a lot of the other courses, while truth conditional semantics is LING 324. So lexical semantics is all about the properties of words. So it covers things like word relations, like synonymy, words that mean the same thing, antonymy, words that mean opposite things, uh, hyponymy relationships. So when you have things like table relating to furniture and something like chair, you can have hyponyms and hypernyms, so how these relate to each other. You can have those kinds of relationships. There's a question, does truth conditional semantics have a relation to truth functional logic? Yes, heavily, heavily, heavily tied together. We'll talk about truth conditional semantics next slide. Lexical semantics also talks about thematic roles. So this is a heavy topic in LING 322. The latter half of that course is heavily dependent on thematic roles and selection by the verb. So you'll talk about that there. This is an interesting one, and I have a little chart of this on the lecture page on Canvas, but you can take a look at color terms and kinship terms across languages and lexical semantics. So if you take a look at the number of words that languages use for colors, like English has many different words for colors. Most people are familiar with 15 to 20, gray, yellow, black, blue, red, purple, and so on. But we have like turquoise, aqua, salmon. Like if you're into painting, you know a lot of different words for colors. But some languages can have as little as 3 words for colors. And what's amazing is that if you take a look at all the different words that languages have, you know exactly which colors they have, depending on how many words. So if a language has only 3 words for colors, you know it's black, white, and red. If a language has 6 words for colors, you know exactly which extra 3 words are added. And there's a little chart on the lecture page that tells you that. So that's kind of interesting. Kinship terms are the same way. For instance, we use brother in English and do older brother, younger brother. So we modify the word brother. But other languages will use completely different words for older brother and younger brother. So they won't have a common brother in that. In computational linguistics courses, So I don't know about LING 250, but in LING 807, a graduate course on computational linguistics, LING 807, if you're ever lucky enough to take that course, they talk about how you can express words as features. So for example, if we say that we have a word that is plus feminine, minus adult, plus human, we might think of a word like girl. It's a human female that's not an adult. And you can find synonyms based on other words that fit these properties. And as you get more specific, you can specify a word more clearly. So for instance, if we take away plus fem, then you might also get boy here, you might also get child, and we would say, okay, there's a bunch of different words that fit this feature set. And maybe you're developing a script to find these types of words. So yeah, you can do something like that. Words is a semantic network. You can see how related words are to each other. And we'll cover lexical ambiguity on Tuesday. So lexical semantics is really all about words. And we don't do that much in this course, but we do a little bit of that. What we do in this course is truth conditional semantics. So we take a look at how we determine the meaning of a sentence and how we find truth through its syntactic structure. And it is a little bit intimidating at first, but it really is sort of a beautiful side of linguistics. It's a side of linguistics that you don't get exposed too much. So we talk about scope ambiguity. So this is the everybody loves someone example. We talk about negation ambiguity. So this is the not A but B example that we saw before. So the truth conditions of sentences. So when is Jack is cold, but Kate is hot, or Kate is warm? True. You can ask a question like that. When is that sentence true? Or uh, all my professors like papaya. When is that sentence true? How can a computer determine when that sentence is true? How can a computer understand that sentence? We're not doing any computing in this course. We're not writing any code or anything like that. But everything we learn in this course can be translated into something that a computer could do if you had those skills. There's a very close connection between what we do in this course and what computing science can do, or what they used to do a while ago. How do we understand quantifiers and determiners? Words like the, uh, uh, all, many, few, some. When we attach those to nouns and when we have multiple of those in a sentence, what do? Uh, Numerals as well, 2, 4. How do they interact with each other? We don't quite get to talk about modality, words like should and could, but in graduate courses, you talk about those, and those are nasty. So those can be really nasty. Uh, but yeah, truth conditional semantics is really all about truth and meaning. So start with some mathematics and some of the basics. And when we do the mathematics and we do the Q in the course, I make sure to spend a lot of time talking about how it relates to linguistics and use linguistic examples. So that way everything has a purpose and you can see the big picture right away. And it's not just like 3 weeks of abstract stuff before we get to the important stuff. But yeah, that's it for today's lecture. If there's any questions, I'm happy to hang around and answer them. But yeah, if you don't have any questions, I'll see you Tuesday. If you do have questions, stick around and I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, enjoy your weekend. Is Tuesday another lecture or tutorial? Yeah, so okay. All of these lectures, except for today, this was kind of weird, but they're sort of a mix of lecture and tutorial. Usually what I do is I introduce a concept and do a few slides, and then I'll give you about 10 minutes or so to do a practice question and go over the solutions. So it's always a bit of a back and forth. That's how the lectures will be. Any homework for the weekend? No. You won't have your first assignment until, I won't give you your first assignment until Tuesday, but you can open it up and see now what you'll have to do if you want to. The recorded lecture will be posted after each lecture. Expect it to take about an hour and a half in case there are any processing difficulties. So they should be up by no later than 1:30 p.m. Enjoy your weekend.